In this video, we'll talk about how to create your activities for students so that they stand out, are engaging, and provide a meaningful space for students to create and learn. We'll go over how to change fonts and colors, insert text boxes, learn about that oh so fabulous undo button, how to insert shapes for student responses, and more. The great thing about Google is that the toolbars in Google Docs, Google Drawings, and Google Slides are very similar. So once you know the features of one, it will translate to those other programs. So let's get started. I'm going to create a couple of activities for my students that they'll be completing to show what they've learned about animal adaptations and habitats. As I make these activities, keep in mind an activity that you could create for your students and use what I'm showing you here to do so. Once you know how to use the toolbar, you'll see that you can really create any type of student activity. As you can see on my screen, I've created a new Google slide. I've given it a title in the upper left-hand corner of the screen. You can see at the top is your toolbar. These are the features that we're going to be talking about today. I'm going to first click on the X on the right-hand side of the screen to get rid of this themes box. And then I'll click and drag a box around these two text boxes, and I'll hit my delete key on my keyboard. The next thing I'm going to do is insert a title for this activity. I'm going to click on the T in the toolbar to create a text box. When I click on it, I can click now on my white space and a text box will appear. I can change the size of this text box by clicking on these blue squares and dragging them in or dragging them out. The other way to make a text box is to click on the T and this time click and drag the box out until it's the size that you want it to be. Now you'll notice that other text box appears like it's been deleted, but it really hasn't been. So if you click on your screen, you can select the text box you don't want and then just hit delete on your keyboard. I'm going to click and drag the text box to the top and I want to center it. I'm going to drag it until I see a red line appear. When that red line appears, that means that your box has been centered. Now I'll type in the title that I want it to say. I'm going to type in Animal Adaptations. If I'd like to change the font, I can click and highlight all the text and click on Arial in the top at the toolbar. And then I can choose the font I want. I can also just click on the text box, making sure that the cursor, do you see the cursor after the letter N? Making sure that that cursor does not appear. If I just click on the box then like this, I can go ahead and change the font. I can choose the font size by clicking on the down arrow next to the number 14 here. I'll change it to 30. If I'd like to bold my title, I can click on the B in the toolbar to bold. If you decide you don't want it bolded, you just click the B again and the bold gets removed. I can click the I to make it italic. Again, I'll just click the I to remove it. I can click the U to underline. The A is the text color, so I can click on the A and change the color of the text. And this highlighting color will actually highlight the text, just like you would if you had a highlighter on paper. I'm going to click on that highlight color again and click transparent so it goes back. You'll notice that my title is off-centered. I'm going to click on the box, making sure that that cursor is nowhere to be found. Then I'll click on the Align button in the toolbar, and I'll click the Center Align button, and now my title has been centered. You'll notice that because I've clicked on this text box, a lot of different options have appeared in the toolbar, but you'll notice when I click off of the text box, different buttons appear. Let's talk about the background color. If you'd like to change the background color of this slide, or maybe you want the whole slide to have an image on it, you'll click the word background. If you want to change the color, you'll click on this circle and you can go ahead and change the color. If you want to choose an image, you can click Choose Image. You can search for an image on Google. You can even upload one right from your computer, and you'll just click Select after you've selected it, and then you'll click Done. Personally, I rarely select background images or background colors because I really like my slide to be easy to use and easy to see for students. If you do decide to change your background color, just make sure that if you have a dark background, that the text color you choose is light so that it shows up. The same if you choose a light background color, just make sure that the font color you use is dark. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to divide this slide into two sections. I'd like my students to choose two different habitats and list a couple of animals in each habitat. What I'll do to make a line down the center of this slide is I'm going to go up to the toolbar and I will click the line icon. I'm going to click and drag this line down. Now, here's a tip. Hold down the Shift key as you drag the line down and your line will appear straight. I can change the color of this line. You can see the line is still selected. And in my toolbar, I can click on Line Color. I can change the color. The next icon changes the line weight. So if I click on line weight, I can change the thickness of that line. And to the right of that is the line dash icon. I can decide if I want it to be a dashed line or not. I'm going to click back on this line icon and I'm going to click on this little down arrow next to it. I want to show you that you can also add an arrow this way. So if you click on arrow and you click and drag out your arrow, again, I like to hold down Shift so that my arrow is straight and I let go. You can see I've drawn an arrow. If you click on that arrow, you can do the same things. You can change the color, you can make it thicker, you can make it dotted, you can even change what it looks like at the end. I'm going to click and delete this arrow. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to insert a couple of text boxes for my students. I'm going to click on the T in the toolbar again. I'll click and drag the text box out until it's the size I want. In the text box, I'm going to write habitat name here. That way my students know what has to go in here. I can click and highlight that text and change it a different font. I can make it bigger, of course. It's up to you. I want this same text box now to appear on the other side of my slide as well. So I'm going to make sure I've clicked on the edge of the text box. I'll hit Control-C on my keyboard for copy and Control-V for paste. I'm going to click and drag it out. Now, if you want to make sure that these are in line with each other, you can hold down the Shift button and click on both boxes. Then I'm going to let go of Shift. I'm going to right-click and go down to Align vertically and in the middle. So you'll see what happens to my text boxes now. Now they're at the same height. I'm going to click and drag this one over just a smidge so that it's in the middle there. Now I'm going to insert a shape so that my students know where to put their images of those animals they're talking about. I'm going to go up to my toolbar and click on the Shape tool. You can see there are different shapes to choose from. If I go down, there's different arrows that look different than the arrow I showed you before. If I hover over callouts, you can see there's speech bubbles, thought bubbles, and stars, and there are even some symbols for equations. I'm going to hover back over shapes, and I'm going to click this second one, rounded rectangles. I love rounded rectangles. I'm going to click on rounded rectangle, and I'm going to click and drag the rectangle out until it's the size that I want. You can always click and drag in these blue squares on the edge to make it taller or shorter. You can drag from the corners. If you want the box to be a little less round, you can click and drag on this orange diamond and you can move it so that the shape changes just a little bit. Then I'm going to click back on my shape and I'm going to go up to the fill color. I'm going to click on fill color and this will change the color that's inside of that square. Now, if I don't like any of these colors here, I can go down to custom. I can paste in a color code if I already have a certain color I want to use, or I can just click around on the colors. I can change the shade of it on the right-hand side here, and then I can click OK. I want to give my students some instructions for what's going to go in here, so I'm just going to start typing, and I'm going to say animal image. I can highlight this and go up to that align button and center it. Now students know that they're going to put an animal image here. Now below it, I want to make a text box so that they can tell me about the adaptation that the animal has for that habitat. I'm going to click on text box. I'll click and drag the text box out so that it's the same width as my shape. And here I'm just going to say type adaptation. You'll notice that when I click off of it, there is no box around this text box. If you'd like to have it enclosed, you can click on the text box, go up to the border color, click it, and you can choose a border color. You'll notice now it's a color. If you click it again, you can change the thickness of it, and you can always change if it's a dashed line or not. I'm going to change it back to here. If you want this whole thing to appear again, which I do, I actually want 3 more of this same thing I just created. I can just hold down Shift, click anything that I want to duplicate. I'm going to let go of Shift now. I'll hit Control C on my keyboard and Control V to paste. Then I can just click and drag it out. You'll notice a red line has appeared at the top. That tells me that these will be in line with each other, which I love. You might not be as picky as I am about your shapes all lining up, but if you are, there are some great tools built in that'll let you do it. I just keep clicking Control V and the shape pastes again. So now you can see I'm ready for my students to complete this activity. If you'd like to create another activity in the same presentation, you can click over here on the left-hand side of the screen. I like to click the down arrow next to the plus sign, and I just go right to blank. That way I don't have to delete those text boxes. In this activity now, I'm going to show you how to create a Venn diagram that your students can use. What I'll do is I will start with the shape tool. I'm going to create 2 circles. I'm going to click on the shape tool. I'll go down to shapes and I'm going to click on this oval here. I'll click and drag one oval out until it's the size that I want. Then I'm going to change the fill color. I'll go to the bucket fill and I'm going to make it transparent so that you can see through it. Then I'm going to click on it. I'll hit Control C to copy, Control V to paste. You'll notice that you copy and paste a lot with that keyboard shortcut. It's really good to know how to do that. And then I'll just make it so that, number 1, that red line appears so I know that these are even, and so that the middle section gives my students enough room to write. I'm going to hold down Shift and select the other circle, and now I can move them both at the same time until that red line appears and I know that they're centered. I'm going to click on T for text box. I'll click and drag out the text box. I'm going to type in habitat. They're going to be comparing 2 different habitats. You can change the font or the size. Then I'm just going to copy this by clicking on it. Control C, Control V to paste. It's in line. I can actually scoot it over so it's more in the middle. And the last one is a both text box. I'm just going to click and drag it into here and I'll type both. Now I want to make sure that my students have a space to type, and I'm going to create the text box for them. So I'll click the T for text box. I'm going to click and drag it so it's the same size as these circles. And I want to make it so that they create a bulleted list. So I'm going to go up to the top of my toolbar. Here you can see it. This icon stands for numbered list, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is the bulleted list. So I'm going to click on the bullet. And then I'll just write type here so my students know where to type. Anytime they click enter while they're typing, a new bullet will automatically appear. I'm going to click on the edge of the box so that cursor disappears, and I'll click Control C to copy, Control V to paste, and I'll paste it right over here. And then I'll click Control V to paste again, and I'm going to click and drag this over to here. I'm just resizing the text box so that it fits. Now you can see this is very basic. You can add images, which I talk about in another video. You can add more color to it. You can add links for students to go to other websites or even insert videos. These are all in my next videos for you to watch. The last two features I want to talk about are over here in the top left-hand corner. So let's say that I accidentally click on this and I delete it, and I don't want it to be deleted. I can click on this undo button in the upper left-hand corner, and the text box will reappear. Next to it is the redo button. If I click that, the text box disappears. So undo and redo buttons are going to be really beneficial for you and your students to know. Make sure you tell your students about it. Lastly, this is the zoom in and zoom out button. Your students might realize that they want to zoom in so that they can see their text a little bit better. To do that, they click on the zoom button and then they have to click on their slide to zoom in. If they want to start typing now, they have to go to the arrow, the select arrow, click it, and then they can start typing. In order to zoom out, you click on the zoom button and you're going to right click, or if they have Chromebooks, they'll two-finger click on the zoom out button. But make sure before you do anything else, you go back to that select arrow, and that way you can change things then on your page. Before we leave this video, I want to show you a couple other examples of how you can use your toolbar to create activities. In this activity, I did insert a background image. You can see that here. And then I just created rectangles. So these rectangles I just rotated and colored in the back ones, and then I inserted text boxes. Same thing over here. I just inserted rectangles on top of rectangles. In this activity, I created shapes that I put words into the middle of, and then students can click and drag them into, look, another rounded rectangle. In this communities activity, you can see that these are just rounded rectangles and lines, just like I showed you. So there are a lot of ways that you can easily create activities if you know how to use your toolbar, especially that shape button. All right, that is all for this video. I hope that you're ready to start creating some of your own activities. If you found this video helpful, please rate us on TPT. And if you have any teacher friends that you think would enjoy this course, please let them know where they can find it.